How do we, as Dungeon Masters, play into our player character's strengths? Well, before answering that question, we have to answer another equally important one. Why is playing into their strengths important? After all, don't many people play tabletop games in Dungeons & Dragons to overcome struggles? To fight against the odds and barely by the skin of their teeth snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat? Well, sure, but you know, look beneath that. Why would somebody want to struggle and overcome? So they can feel good about their accomplishments, of course. And truthfully, I've yet to find someone who didn't play these types of games for that reason, at least in some regard. The reason we play is to roleplay, to experience new things, and to put ourselves in the shoes of characters exploring new things and overcoming challenges. The whole point is to feel good about ourselves, right? Well, kind of, but therefore, shouldn't we as Dungeon Masters inherently just automatically strive to make players succeed? If it's not clear, that question is rhetorical. If I've learned anything from the comments on my videos, especially the more controversial ones, it's that the majority of my viewers are real smart, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I know you guys know where this is going. Yes, of course our players should succeed. But without the threat and possibility of failure, a success often feels hollow. You can't feel as if you've overcome a barrier if there was never a barrier in order to feel like you've overcome it in the first place. Thus, failure equals success. You cannot have success without failure. Never forget that if you have never faced failure, then you are not really successful, as you didn't overcome anything.
Oh no, it can't be true. Everything's rigged!
Success is not a measure of how many times things didn't go wrong. Success is the amount of times you've overcome failure. So, with all that being said, what does that have to do with the topic of this video? Well, I want to talk about leaning into your player character's strengths in the best ways you can while also challenging them. I want to talk about how to make your character feel like badasses without robbing them of the struggle that comes with that. Like I just said about 1 minute ago, the threat of failure is needed in order to be able to feel like you've been successful. At least in my opinion, but it's an opinion I feel very strongly about. With that out of the way, that doesn't mean just making something hard and then having the player succeed through a struggle is necessarily a good feeling. Sometimes you have to put a monumental issue in front of your players and then watch them overcome it through what they're good at.
What do we? Oh.
I'm just gonna fly over to him and like stand next to him. Yeah.
We should also take all.
Yeah, I'll help.
I'll drag him.
Watch out for that freakout! God damn it, we suck at
As you land over top, all of a sudden this shadow appears and darting out of the tree line, landing extremely heavily onto the ground.
Of course, when you looked outside, we didn't see anything.
It also rolled a natural 20 with its
of course.
stealth.
Best short rest ever.
Did we actually get a short rest though? Because I didn't take it.
Technically, I'll say you guys just received a short rest.
I know, I did.
Wait, and
I did my
Yes,
head.
I did the spell.
See, it's one thing to have a massive obstacle in front of them. It's entirely another if that party's skills are well suited for that challenge. And what do I mean by that? Well, consider the following and let me give you an example. Your party is coming up against a giant dragon, one who has been terrorizing a kingdom for generations. Adventuring party after adventuring party has gone to face the fearsome beast and none have survived. It will be a brutal, most likely deadly battle. Except your party is comprised of tricksters, backstabbers, and thieves. Adventuring parties and the bravest warriors in the world have faced the dragon before, sure, but they have never faced the likes of this one. Ultimately, the battle ends halfway through. Why? Because the battle progressed and the party began to converse with the dragon and explain why they were there. They weren't like other parties. Oh no, they were sympathizers of the dragon. They had heard of its conquest here and the absolute lack of support the denizens of the realm had given her. However, they also knew of a land that was ruled by a tyrant who was awful and yet loved by all his people. No matter how terrible he treated them, they still reigned him with golden affection. They knew no better. But surely if the dragon could vanquish the tyrant, she could be a far more benevolent ruler and give the people the leader they deserve. One who would truly deserve the adoration they gave. And so it takes some persuasion rolls, some high DCs, and quite a bit of clever thinking, but eventually the dragon agrees to take a look and will in fact go investigate this land and see if it's true. And if it is, it will slay the tyrant. And with that, the dragon heads off. Little does it know that the party just sent it to fight their greatest enemy, the BBEG of the whole campaign, who has slain far more powerful creatures than dragons. Now consider that scenario and think about the different reactions the Dungeon Masters may have to it. Instinctively, I might be put off by it and scoff. Of course they can't just convince the dragon to leave and go fight the BBG. It's too easy, and then they don't get the satisfying conclusion of fighting it. That's not fun. Or is it? That's where the strengths of the party lie. Clearly, in this example, they created characters who were skilled at deceit and trickery, and it's what the players found exciting and what their characters enjoyed. So for a party of warriors and fighters, yeah, maybe it's boring to just have the dragon fly away. I will agree with that. But for a bunch of tricksters and scamps, this is the ultimate win. Not only did they trick the dragon, it is now going to inconvenience the greatest of their enemies. Their smarts have won the day. And it's not always quite that easy, don't get me wrong. Rarely does a party tailor all of their characters towards a specific strength, but in this example, it helps highlight what I'm trying to get at here. Things do in fact need to be difficult in order for them to feel like they've succeeded. However, you can make things difficult while still leaning into your player character's strength. I once played a sorcerer who was really good at healing. He was a Divine Soul Cleric multi-class, and I made him the ultimate support. Healing buffs the whole shebang. Problem was, I failed to take into account one factor. Our campaign just wasn't very combat focused. I honestly could hardly count the amount of times we were in any kind of need of actual healing, save for one fight, and because of that, yeah, it just didn't feel good to play. But that's also because that's not what the campaign was about. That character did a lot of cool things. He disintegrated somebody with inflict wounds, he buffed the party spell sword to a ridiculous degree, and even declared a dramatic speech at the end battle.
Shen! A panda stands between you and your... What? Prepare yourself for a hot...
What? But he never healed because it wasn't necessary. I wish I had taken into account while making him, because I knew no matter how many cool things I did, he would never do what I had made him to do, and that made his successes feel a little less than what I was hoping for. And that's the point I want to focus on here, because whether I realized it or not, most players have a fantasy in their minds that they'd like their characters to accomplish. The things they want to do, the tasks they want to complete, and the moments they really want their character to shine in. So even if your player characters succeed and overcome the challenges set in front of them, at the end of the day, if they always succeed by happenstance and at least occasionally through the strengths that they made for their character, it's always going to be just a little disappointing because they don't get to use those strengths as often as they'd prefer to. Because I mean, like, let's be real. They made their characters to be able to accomplish certain things and to live out that fantasy. And if they can't achieve that, it can be a bit of a letdown. But that being said, that can really put a strain on the Dungeon Master. Not only do you have to find a way to curate it so that they succeeded, but also still a challenge and also still using their strengths. I mean, let's be honest, that's a lot. But truthfully, it doesn't have to be quite that complicated, and here's why. I use a method that works like this. At the beginning of my campaign, I ask in the session 0 or watch the first 3 sessions to see what my player characters do. What are they focused on? Does their character seem charismatic? Do they really want to seem powerful? Are they intelligent or street smart or observant? I basically take note of what they seem to want their characters to be good at, and I'll write down 2 or 3 traits that the characters seem to be going for. Generally, they're pretty vague. For example, in one of my campaigns that I have run in the past, I had a monk who was very intent on learning everything she could, so she wants to be inquisitive. She also tends to be extraordinarily friendly, even when she maybe shouldn't be. Okay, awesome. She wants to be charming and likable. There we go, 2 easy traits to watch out for, inquisitive and likable. I'll write those things down, I'll make sure to keep note of them, and I will immediately refer to my notes whenever it comes up to make sure, hey, is this an instance where this character wants to be good at these things? And then I will play into that fact. Because if it is one of those instances, that should give me pause. This is something she wants her character to be good at. This is either a moment where A, she will be able to succeed at a core character trait and feel excited in that moment, or B, a chance to set up failure so the next time she does succeed, it will feel amazing because she has overcome a barrier in order to do something her character was good at. With this method, I don't really have to pay too much attention. I just have to look at my notes whenever players do something that catches my attention, and there you go. Now, I can't try and make sure that they lean into their character traits all the time and really devote making sure they do it 24/7, but there are other methods of doing this too. Have you ever had a player try to use a skill that just wasn't working with the mechanics? For example, I was once playing an artificer, D'Artagnan, and he often used the same trick consistently. He would point his gun at an enemy in a world where guns had only been invented by him, mind you, and he would ask if they knew what it was. When they said no, he would ask them if they knew how fast a chunk of metal would need to go in order to pierce someone's skull, and explain it in a concise manner how his weapon could scientifically cause that to happen. I don't think it ever worked. And it wasn't because of the whole bit he was doing was bad, it was because he literally had a 6 charisma. He just couldn't intimidate to save his life. So that's what I mean by a player trying to use a skill that doesn't really work with the mechanics. Fortunately, there's actually a fix for this in the Dungeon Master's Guide itself if you're playing D&D. It's a rule that's often overlooked, but it is actually part of the base game, and it's not even a variant. Yet, oftentimes I see people ignoring it. strength. In Chapter 8 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, under the section detailing skills, you can see the following segment. Under certain circumstances, you could decide a character's proficiency in a skill can be applied to a different ability check. So this means that it's actually a part of the base game to be able to call upon skill checks that don't rely on their associated stats. My current Dungeon Master uses this rule a lot. This means that my character flexing on his knowledge of his weapon could have been an intimidation check with intelligence as opposed to charisma. Or say you're trying to deceive someone into thinking you're not as injured as you are, and so you make a deception check with constitution rather than charisma.
I might be bluffing. It's conceivable, you miserable vomitous mass. I'm only lying here because I lack the strength to stand. Perhaps I have the strength after all. Drop your sword.
I knew it. I knew you were bluffing. I knew he was bluffing.
This allows your player characters to be able to experience the successes even in skills they don't usually have high base stats for, because they might be able to use their strengths to overcome the challenge in a unique way in front of them. So ultimately, letting your parties overcome challenges with what they are good at and making sure they lean into it can lead to a very satisfying game. And I think that's pretty great. So go out there, do that, enjoy that, and let your player characters feel powerful in the ways they were built for, so you can create truly amazing challenges for them. Go out into the world and make it your own. Never forget to play your role. And well, my wife's not here, so I'll give the call to action. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Oh, she's a lot better at this than I am, isn't she? Wife? Where are you?